Good evening, Chair. Good evening, doctors. If you can kindly begin the session now. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can say it.
Very good, very good. Greetings from Maryland, USA. And welcome to part 2 of the LSA mentoring program for Nigerian-based women graduate students and rising scholars. My name is Gloria Chukwu, a historian with over 30 years of teaching and research experience. I've had the privilege of teaching in a couple of higher institutions in Nigeria and here in the United States. I am currently a professor of Africana Studies and also chair of the department, an affiliate professor of Gender and Women's Studies and Language, Literacy and Culture doctoral program at University of Maryland. My research primarily focuses on Igbo history, women in colonial and post-colonial political economies of Nigeria and Africa, ethno-nationalisms and conflicts in Nigeria, and African nationalism and intellectual history. I have 4 books, single-authored and edited volumes, including Igbo Women and Economic Transformation in Southeastern Nigeria, Igbo Intellectual Tradition, and Women and Nigeria Biafra War. Also, to my credit, I have about 70 or over 70 scholarly publications, articles, and have attended presentations or conferences, forums in over 130 forums with that goes across continents, Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, and South America. Here I have an esteemed scholars on the panels. I have bios of some of them that I would introduce them one after the other, and those that I don't have their bios can introduce themselves. And I will start with Kale Jose. Kale Jose is the chair of the Legal Studies Association's Publications Committee. She is a research associate at the African Studies Center at the University of Oxford and a research fellow at the African Literature Department of Wits University, I guess, South Africa. She is the editor of the Journal of African Cultural Studies and is the current president of the African Studies Association of the United Kingdom. Her research focuses on knowledge production and knowledge ecosystems. And together with Dr. Louisa Ebudike, she has led a research project on aspects of life at Nigerian universities, which will soon come out in the next issue of the Journal of African Cultural Studies. It's good to see you, Kale. Dr. Mfo Ekpotu is the head of the Department of History and Diplomatic Studies at the University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. She holds a PhD in gender history and is a widely traveled scholar with exposure to varying networks and proactive engagements in national and international conferences, as well as research collaborations. Dr. Ekpotu is interested in the peculiar ways the African woman navigates sociocultural and political economic spaces through a historical lens. She is particularly focused on sexuality and labor, gendered migration, and human trafficking. Some of her publications include book chapters such as The Concept of Womanhood, Female Professionalism in Nigeria and Personal Branding for Visibility and Growth in the 21st Century, Sex Work and Social Legal Space in Nigeria, and Sexualizing the City, Female Prostitution in Nigeria's Urban Centers in Historical Perspective. Dr. Ekpoti is a Cephas Research Fellow, a Cephas Codesra Young Historian, and a life member of the Historical Society of Nigeria. Dr. Ekpoti, it's a pleasure meeting you. I'm not sure she's here yet. The next panelist is Omotoya Oloruntoba Oju, who is a professor of dramatic literature with emphasis on African American, and Caribbean studies. Her degrees from universities of Ilorin and Ibadan are in English and performing theater arts. She has lectured at the university level for over 30 years and currently lectures in the English Studies Department at Adekunle Ajasin University, Akamba, Akako in Nigeria. She has produced and directed several plays, and in 2010, facilitated the setting up of her university's theater troupe, which she ran as its pioneer director for 7 years. She also developed a curriculum for and was the foundation head of the institution's Department of Performing Arts. Professor Oloruntoba Oju is an international scholar with several publications to her name in reputable local and international journals, and has made presentations at several international conferences in Africa, Europe, and America. Dr. Oloruntoba Oju, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Our next panelist, Dr. Vicky Brennan, would introduce herself because I don't have her bio.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prof. And apologies for not sending my bio to you in advance. Yes, I'm Dr. Vicky Brennan. I'm an associate professor of religion at the University of Vermont in the United States. I'm an interdisciplinary scholar, so I teach in a Department of Religious Studies. I have degrees in anthropology and in music, ethnomusicology. I wrote a book. I have a book published, Singing Yoruba Christianity. That's about music and performance in the Cherubim and Seraphim Church movement, Ionio in Lagos. And I'm finishing my second book manuscript at the moment on Yoruba gospel music, which is about media, celebrity, and attention in the gospel music industry in Nigeria, in Southwest Nigeria. I've published in a number of different academic journals in different disciplines, given my interdisciplinary background in anthropology journals, religion journals, music journals, etc. And I also, I work at a university that is primarily undergraduate and very teaching focused. And so I bring that sort of attention to our professional lives that sees the need to combine a lot of teaching with my research efforts. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. I just want to commend the Legal Studies Association for initiating this important mentoring program, and also for being able to put together 2 panels on mentorship, especially in relation to Nigerian-based women, graduate students, and rising scholars. The theme of our focus is on professional literacy and academic citizenship. So I will give my take on the theme, after which the panelists will go as their names are listed on the program. Now, when we talk about professional literacy, we are referring to the application of knowledge and skills that we gained from educational pursuits and other experiences to deal with day-to-day decision-making processes and also execute any responsibilities assigned to us as a member of a profession. The key 4 principles: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Now, for academic citizenship, it encompasses the benefits, responsibilities, and all interactions of belonging to the academic community, and also your contributions to the community, its culture, activities, and goals. Now, when it comes to academic community, there are 4 key areas that one can emphasize: research, which includes publication and other forms of scholarship; teaching, yes, learning, we learn as we teach; and also service, which comes in various forms. I will talk about my experience in the United States to illustrate some points. In the United States, universities have faculty handbook. I think yesterday panel mentioned, I don't know whether it's red or yellow book in Nigeria, what it's called. But of course, the importance of this book is that it contains and defines terms of your membership of the university community where you find yourself, the job expectations, your rights, benefits, promotion processes, tenure, which is unique in the United States educational system, codes of conduct, which hinges on academic integrity, protocols, and others. There are also unwritten traditions and practices that encompass culture of the university that you must have to learn and adapt to in order to survive in that community. Now, for African women academics in the United States, they embody intersectional identities. Sometimes those identities empower and also undermine them in their career pursuits, depending on the circumstances. We are talking of African academic women constantly navigating multiple barriers, such as race, gender, nationality, religion, disability, wifehood, motherhood, single parenthood, cultural and language barriers, and so forth. I can't remember how many times when I started teaching in the United States, my students, even colleagues, would always remind me, oh, you have an accent. And I will reply, oh, so you do too. My accent is my identity. I don't plan to change how I speak or how I talk. So these are some of the things you have to deal. And oftentimes, that so-called accent affects the way you are evaluated by your students. That's culture of the academia in the United States. I will share a few examples of this navigation of barriers, multiple barriers. I've had the privilege of teaching, maybe not privilege, or maybe it is, predominantly white students. And in one of those classes of mine, I encountered a student, and of course, in the evaluation, because they do evaluate our teaching at the end of the semester, what the student found admiring or important, not the content or how I taught, but the fact that according to the student, I have the audacity to teach white students. Meanwhile, that university is predominantly white. Some of the students have not been taught by a Black person, by an African professor, talk less a female African professor. So you can imagine my situation. Now, of course, at the end, the evaluation report was not impressive because of all these biases. And I was frustrated. But my chair, as if he knew what I was struggling with, called me to his office and asked me not to mind that he understood what I was going through. His words were, I know what you are dealing with. You were navigating multiple barriers of gender, of race, and of nationality. That was coming, that was reassuring. And I was able to spend 4 years in that university. Then in another university, I encountered a dean, a Black man, an African American, who informed us at a point that the primary function of faculty members was customer service, and that we were expected to be in our offices and observe office hours from Monday to Friday. I was the only person that spoke out, apparently because of my Nigerian educational background. I have taught in Nigerian institutions. I spoke out. I reminded him of what the handbook, faculty handbook said, that we do have 2 schedules. Either you choose Monday, Wednesday, Friday to teach and observe office hours, or Tuesdays, Thursdays. Of course, I fell out of his good books, and he had this tradition of reassigning or reappointing or appointing people to committees. And it was like a big deal. So what I decided to do was that this place was not for me. The marginalization and ignoring my existence and presence gave me energy to channel towards publications. And it was those 2-3 years were one of the most productive sets of years that I've been in the United States. And with the publications, I left the university and got a better job. Then the third example I would give when it comes to navigating implicit and explicit biases. I've had multiple experiences when I serve on committees, and I will make constructive contributions. And some members of the committees will say, we give the credit of my contributions to others. They would reference, oh, as this person said, or as this person contributed. But I was the one who made the original contribution. So at a point, I decided to fight back. And I fought back in subtle ways. I will say or repeat myself after they made their points, that I will raise my hand and say, as I said earlier, or I want to reiterate the points I've made earlier, reminding them that I know the game they were playing, but I wasn't confrontational. I was subtle in fighting back. Then another, which will be the last example I would give, was in my current place of work. We usually have, by then I had become, no, before that, I was invited by the senior administration to become the chair of the department. By then I was an associate professor. I politely declined. I informed the senior administration that I will reconsider their invitation when I become a full professor. And of course I did become a full professor a few years after. And a year after, I assumed the headship of my department. And I've been serving this is my 7th year as the chair of that department. Then the same university, we always have monthly meetings with our dean and some key university administrators to address important issues. And in one of those meetings, the issue of helping external or international scholars go through their immigration process to regularize their papers and be able to be full members of the community. Well, in attendance was the university lawyer who is supposed to be responsible to guiding these international scholars to go through the immigration process. He made a statement, a carefree statement, well, those scholars are on their own and should deal with the problem as they choose. I couldn't bear it. And I spoke out. I called him out. I told him that I'm disappointed in him and the statement he made. I said that the university could do better than it was doing. Everybody was shocked. They were surprised. And of course, some of my friends and colleagues in the meeting afterwards came to me and thanked me for what I did. But that intervention resulted in a policy change. Soon after, a seminar on immigration and international students and scholars was organized by the university. They invited some experienced immigration lawyers to campus. And now the university has become involved in helping international scholars go through their immigration process. Again, the point I'm trying to emphasize in this last example is know when you choose your battles and how you fight those battles. And of course, it is also important to be mindful of time management and prioritize your tasks. Important to build and nurture relationships with colleagues, with mentors, with senior administrators, friends in the communities and so forth. But at the same time, it is also important to have the power to discern, the willpower to discern harmful and unmanageable relationships. And when it comes to those relationships, you have to let them go rather than allowing them to continuously drag you down. There is too much stress already. You don't want to be in relationships that would result in emotional roller coaster for you and therefore hamper your productivity. It is also be mindful of self-care. I've talked about I just mentioned the stressful environment be fair, firm, and know when to draw boundaries. When to say, no, I cannot do this, but politely do that. It is also important to engage in self-promotion. I suffered from this when I came newly to the United States. Nigerian system was a system of humility where you don't advertise yourself. You don't sing your music. You don't drum your success. But it took me time to realize that United States is a different field. You have to sing your song. You have to work hard. You have to advertise your skills, your production. Because if you don't, nobody would. You have to let people know what you are capable of doing. Be confident, be assertive, but at the same time, be humble. At the end, always know that what is important is how you carry and comport yourself. It matters. And it is also about integrity. I think I will stop here and allow other panelists to make their contributions before we engage in Q&A. Thank you. So based on the way the names appear, we will hear from Vicky Brennan, Dr. Brennan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair. And yeah, I'm very excited to be part of this group and to contribute what I can to this conversation. I listened to the panels yesterday, the panelists speak on their experiences yesterday, and I'm not going to sort of repeat so many of the insights they offered. Instead, I'm going to focus my comments on an issue that's really central to me and that I think is actually a really good way for women in the academy to sort of approach their work both philosophically as well as logistically. So I'm going to talk a little bit about community, care, and collaboration. I want to sort of emphasize the importance to build a community for yourself, to care for each other in that community, and then to collaborate because we are smarter together. To quote the feminist theologian Mary Hunt, together we are a genius. And so I want to offer some remarks to try to fill out both idealistically as well as practically ways to embody this community of care and collaboration that I'm advocating for. And to speak specifically to the implications for women scholars, faculty, researchers, and students. And I do want to note my comments are directed not just to the mentees in the room, though certainly I hope they will be helpful, but also to other mentors and to other senior folks who might be listening. So the first point I wanted to make about community and care is the need for women, especially in the academy, but also for all people in the academy, men and women alike, to avoid scarcity thinking and behavior. There's no reason to think that there can be only one woman or only one Black woman or only one African woman or only one of any, only one queer woman, only one whatever, right? That is part of a pattern where women undermine each other by thinking that there's only room for one. And so following from that, and I actually think the example from yesterday's panel of Dr. Aisha Bawa, who noted that she was the first female lecturer in history, a 40-year history of the history department at Danfodio University is exemplary in that regard, right? She got her way through to that position, and now she's using her position to help others. So when you break through, help lift others up. And for the that's directed towards the mentors, the senior folks in the room. To the mentees, know that you deserve that possibility. Don't look at something and say, oh, they already have an X, right? Have confidence and seek support in order to achieve that, right? So avoid scarcity thinking. It's a subtle thing that we often do, but it's really one of the barriers to sort of increasing the number of women in the academy. The second point, I think, is obvious, is to build relationships. And you can certainly think about it as a network, but I would also say to think about it more broadly, and to really carefully pay attention to power in the building of those relationships. You can think about power vertically, that inequities in power between different people who are having an academic or professional relationship with each other need to be identified and then discussed. I think one of the best ways to go about doing that is to name the imbalance, and to then set the terms of an engagement, whether it's a mentor-mentee relationship, whether it's an advisor and advisee. And this is, I think, something that's more important for the mentor and the advisor to be aware of, that they should be very clear with their advisees or their mentees about how they understand that the relationship will work. But I will also say that if your mentor or advisor doesn't want to engage in this kind of ground rule setting, laying the terms of your relationship, then perhaps they might not be the best person to work with, or you might have to adopt certain kinds of strategies to deal with them, right? So I would say be very aware of it. I know I have had relationships in my professional career where I didn't take that into account, and it has often led me down dead ends. And I think some of the examples that Dr. Chukwu, who perhaps you're definitely a much more a stronger person than I am in some ways, because I will often not speak back to power when I know I should. But I think those examples you gave were really great at what I'm talking about, right? To say, like, look, there's this handbook. This is setting a term of a relationship. These are the rules I will follow. If you want additional rules, let's negotiate it. Let's name it and see if it's something I can agree to. Right. And in this regard, and this points to some comments that were made in yesterday's panel too, and I really don't want to be overly negative, but I have found in my experience that many mid-career women or women at the top of their career had been subject to a lot of abuse, that they fought and clawed their way to the top, and then they turn around and do the same to those below them. It doesn't have to be this way. And I'm not going to say all women do that, but I would say just to be aware of it. If you're a woman at the top, try to think more carefully about how you're acting towards others, but also just be aware of those kinds of behaviors. One tangible thing that can be done, especially for women who have power in the academy, is to lift up other women, to engage in acts of sponsorship. Nominate them for awards. I remember I was nominated for an award at my university by a senior female colleague, and I had never even thought of myself as eligible for that award. And it was it was when I really thought, okay, now, yes, I'm doing the right thing. I'm capable, I'm able to do this. And that, it just meant a lot to me. Nominate others for these possibilities. If you can't participate in an opportunity, name other women. Look always to lift each other up. The second, I also want to talk about the importance of horizontal relationships and community, and the importance of that for collaboration. Especially given the tricky nature of power relationships and vertical community, it's really important to build cohort level relationships, to share opportunities with each other, to develop. I mean, I found a lot of community and support in writing groups. For example, when I was in graduate school, I was part of a group of women all in my cohort. We were at the same level. who whenever we found a grant opportunity, we would share it amongst each other. So instead of seeing it as a competition, like, oh, I found the grant that's for me, we would share it amongst each other. We would write our proposals together, share them with each other. And so that any win then was a win for all of us. Any one woman who won was a win for all of us. The other horizontal relationship I would say is important for, especially for junior scholars, people coming up, is to make a no committee, a committee of your peers who will help you say no to things when you're asked to do them. It's very easy to become overcommitted. I'm very guilty of that myself. There's so many demands, as Professor Chukwu said, there's research, teaching, and service. You're going to be asked to be on committees. You're going to be asked to review articles, all kinds of requests. It helps to be able to say no in the first place. And so I have a group of like 3 women, a text chain. I text them, I say, I just was asked to be on this committee. I think I want to do it because X, or it's going to demand this much of my time. Should I do it? And usually they'll say, no, you don't need that right now. Or they'll say, oh, that would be really good for you to help you proceed, right? So I think your first answer when you're asked to do something should always be, oh, thanks for the honor. Let me think about it. Go to your no committee. And then you can decide whether you can really take on that burden. And that's really important for boundary setting, right? It's good, especially if you're someone like me. I have a hard time disappointing people. And so my no committee helps me put it into perspective and realize that I'm not disappointing anybody, but I will disappoint myself if I overcommit myself and end up too stressed out. And then the final comment I'm going to make is about collaboration as a good. Together we are a genius. I want to repeat that. Together we are a genius. Work towards collaboration. Thinking together is, I think, the best part of being an academic. We're often academia tends to prioritize individual work, individual products, individual thought. But actually, I think it's really important to acknowledge the community, the groupness upon which all of this thought is possible, and then to cultivate it. So I think we can work together both in terms of making our scholarship better through collaboration. And then also, and this is if you're in a promotion system, whether it's tenure or lecturer to senior lecturer, et cetera, to make sure that those collaborative efforts are visible and that they count. I'm going to end there, but I just do want to say, like, I am, the best experiences that I've had as an academic have been ones where I've been able to work with others on a shared goal, whether it's the grant writing group I did as an undergraduate, or whether it's the collaborative projects I've done as a professor, whether they're museum exhibits or co-written articles, collaborative research. I'm always interested in collaborating, and I think that that's one of the often under-acknowledged aspects of our job. So I'll stop there, and I look forward to the question and answer. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hear from Dr. Gozi.
Thank you very much, Professor Chukwu. And thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. I think this Women's Mentoring Network of the Lagos Studies Association is doing something extraordinary globally. The Women's Mentoring Network was founded to address the ongoing gender imbalances in academia. This is not a Nigerian issue. It is not just a Nigerian issue. Everywhere across the globe, from China to Egypt to the UK, women earn less for the same work, have fewer promotion opportunities, and are given less respect. In this same conference, you may have noticed how often senior women scholars are addressed by their first names, by male professors, but even by graduate students. I had a sharp intake of breath yesterday to hear one of my senior women colleagues addressed to by her first name by a young man. You will notice the pattern, how women are the ones who are called by their first name and men are not. Women are consistently demoted in the public sphere, our authority questioned, our status diluted. It's not that we women are status obsessed, but it's one of the major challenges of being alive in a woman's body to ensure that we get the same respect as our male peers. We don't want more respect, just the same. And I'm so happy to see so many men in the room and to see you supporting the Women's Mentoring Network. Thank you to the men in the room. The Lagos Studies Association is one of the spaces in my life where I think we are building a better future. And I think I don't want to be involved in any work anymore at my age where I don't feel I'm building a better future. And when I'm involved in work for Lagos Studies Association, I feel I am making that better world. In our association, we've consistently paid attention to the intellectual and professional development of young women. We've made it possible for mothers to attend the conference with their babies. Very often, the conference is the first outing for babies, but also for their mothers. It's not a conference that makes you feel like you are an alien person when you have a baby in your arms or on your back. We have a baby in the room, I think, maybe not right in this session, but it's the baby there. Welcome, little baby. We've created an environment where female scholars are encouraged to take ourselves seriously. Using bear to take that little man baby is going to build a better world. We've built an association where female scholars are encouraged to take ourselves and each other seriously, build networks with others to support us and carry us. We need the men in our association. Thank you for being in the room. We need the men to step up, to listen to what we want, to not call senior female scholars by their first names. What we want is to be treated professionally. As women in the world, we can do a lot to build this professionalism for ourselves. So Professor Chukwu gave a talk that is almost like it gave birth to itself from my talk. She gave you very concrete examples of what I'm about to say. We need to inform ourselves about the institutions we navigate. That yellow book, that red book, that book of rules, make sure you have a copy, make sure you know it. We may not have mentors who select us for special attention. As women, we mostly don't get chosen to be mentored. We may not have senior staff members who select us to be their successor. Very often, early on in someone's career, you can see that person's been chosen as the prince. They are moving up. They're going to be the king. Women don't get chosen to be the prince. We need to create networks for ourselves of people we trust and can rely on to teach us about institutional cultures. Even if they're not in the same institution, people who can help us navigate the rule books. This knowledge is often guarded closely by those who have power, but there are ways to find out how institutions work and to learn to navigate them. So in the public lives of our institutions, like Lagos Studies Association, which is an institution, it's the most important institution in my life. We have to build support networks for ourselves. If you know that a seminar series in your department is run by bullies, and I know that there are such seminar series, make sure you get allies to attend your seminar. If you know you are likely to be in a place where you will be humiliated or mocked by senior colleagues, whether they're men or women, Make sure you bring some of your age mates or older allies with you. Make sure they are there. Even if they don't speak up, not us are puku, not all of us can speak up, but even if they not, they will be in the room, and when you start feeling that it's hostile, you will have someone who can reach out an imaginary hand to hold your hand. I was in a meeting the other day where Professor Louisa Ebonike was sitting across from the table, and when I was in a very difficult situation, she moved her hand as if she was reaching out to hold my hand. And it gave me the strength I needed to speak up in the way that I was meant to. Reach out to the networks we've created in our association. Ask questions about process and build support for yourself inside your institution, in particular, to run bad boys networks. Be confident, believe in yourself. There's some of us in this room right now who have recently confessed to me that they've lost belief in themselves. Believe in yourself. Don't let the bullies bully you into forgetting who you are. Don't let the bullies draw out anger in you, because that will humiliate you and will play into their hand. When the bullies taunt you, what they want is for you to lose control, and then they can go, see, we can't respect that person because she's hysterical. Be cool and be professional. You see how Professor Chukwu and the other people here carry themselves. Watch how they carry themselves. Learn from them. Look at the way the women scholars you admire hold themselves, how they dress, how they walk, how they hold their papers. Model yourself on behavior that you admire. Watch to see what the maneuvers are and model your behavior on those maneuvers. Always be firm, but be polite. And Professor Brennan gave a very good example there. If someone asks you to do a task, you say, "Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope to take it up in future." You've not said, "How dare you? How dare you ask me? I'm not even," no. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I'm honored to be considered for this role. Please, sir, I would like to wait until I've completed my PhD. There's a way of being polite and graceful. If someone asks you a task that you're not ready for or that you feel is not for you, say thank you and say you would love to take it up in future. When you say no in such a way that you can hold your head up and walk out of the room, making a graceful exit. Remain in control of yourself. Dignity above everything. One of the hardest things is navigating culturally complex spaces. And I think actually Lagos Studies is a culturally complex space. We are a pan-Nigerian community, but we are also a Nigerian community that meshes with a global community in which people do things in different ways. And it's sometimes confusing. We had some really interesting conversations in the workshop I just completed about naming practices and how to know when to call people what, because the messages can be confusing. So on the last day, we all addressed each other as doctor or professor, very formally, to practice for coming into the conference. Someone may sit and have lunch with you and talk about your research. And if Professor Chukwu and I were having lunch by the lagoon, she might say to me, "Call me Gloria." While we're having lunch, I will call her Gloria. But once we are back in this room, I will not dare. Back in this room, to me, she is Professor Chukwu. And the same with the others on the call. Scholars are far too rapidly addressed by our first names in an informal register. Always use a professional register in public when you're addressing a senior woman scholar or any woman scholar. You will hear Professor Said Aderinto addresses even young woman scholars as doctor. Keeps things very professional. Model yourself on Professor Aderinto's behavior. When I introduce you at a conference panel, I shall never use your first name. Even when I introduce my closest friend, yesterday I was on a panel with my closest friend who is in fact living with me. She's sleeping in a bedroom right next to mine. But when I introduced her, I didn't say, here's my friend, or call her by her first name. No, I called her by her full title and gave her the academic respect she deserves. Using the right titles is a good place to start. It's like putting on the uniform of professionalism. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Okay, the next person on the program is Dr. Eputu. I'm glad you are here. Unmute. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I came in a bit late. I had a bit of network problem, but I'm happy to be here. And I'm really happy to be, a mentoring group. And it's a real pleasure. And we hope to do a lot with the students, the mentees. So we were given a bit of a free hand to choose a topic we want to speak on. So I decided to do something on women, fashion, and professionalism. In the University of Port Harcourt, where I'm from, I lecture. This is something I see a lot. And you know that for women, the inferences that you get from your dress style is a bit different from that of the male folk. So I decided to talk a little bit of this to guide the mentees on ways you can strike a balance between wanting to express yourself in your dress code, in your dress style, and as well as being professional. Just to give a little bit of a historical trajectory, female dressing in the workplace has evolved almost alongside the evolution of women in the labor process. For instance, it's about the 1900s that you started having women in the workplace as established. And this has seen, different ways of interaction, different ways of dressing. If you talk about the 1920s, you find that women at that time were not really given that much of a leeway in terms of the way they dress in the workplace. So what you were having was a more kind of relaxed approach. And because most of the women were in the domestic sphere, so you could see the kind of corsets and hemlines that are a bit short. They were sometimes employed as nurses, because when you look at the 1920s, you're talking about the women's suffrage movement. But this goes on, you look at the World War years, especially World War II, when you're having traditional gender roles being turned upside down, and then you have women beginning to emerge, into the public sphere, and then they take their jobs outside, and you see women beginning to, dress in work clothes, denims, overalls, and a bit of that. You look at the 1940s and the 1950s, you have a bit of more traditional feminine look in the workplace. But all this ties along with the social climate at that point. The 60s was the influence of the pop culture, and women at this time were beginning to be more invested in their personal look. And so you're having the tweed shirts, skirts, the boxy jackets, the the hemline that is a bit suede and wide. The decade, or should I say the years of female activism, which was around the 1970s, it kind of brought about a new era of female empowerment, so to speak. And then what you had was, you know, women wearing pants in the workplace. It was like a kind of a fashion statement, a show of empowerment. And then at this time, you having the bell-bottom pound at a time that was the trend. And at this time also, you were beginning to see Black in the workplace. And so they were also given this opportunity, but the social, excuse me, the social constraint or the racial slur at that time was targeted women keeping their natural hair. So you could see in the workplace, the Black women were more or less forced to try to straighten their hair and then remove the kinkiness and the tight curls to straighten it in the way that was deemed acceptable at that time. Now, you look at the 1980s and the wave of empowerment continues, and then you're having women being more fashion conscious, rocking statement pieces, so to speak. At this time, you had the bold, bright colors, you had the shoulder pads, you had the chunky jewelry pieces. This was allowed in the workplace at that time. And it was the trend. It was what was trendy at that time. In Nigeria, whatever, you have to understand that whatever was happening in the Western world was reflecting or impacting on the Nigerian scene, especially what was happening in the British space because of the colonial, the fact that the British colonized Nigeria. So when you're talking about the pop culture, the 1960s, this was also reflected in the way women dressed in the workplace. In the 1980s, for instance, the same thing that was happening in the West, you were having the maxi skirts for women, the baggy suits for men, chunky jewelries, huge perms, wild afros. This was what was going on in the 1980s. Now you fast forward to the present times. The social climate has changed now with you know, issues of identity, binary, non-binary, you know, and all of that. It's now bringing into question what is the typical feminine fashion in the workplace. You're having, are we talking about the skirts for men? Are we talking about the, you know, different kinds of things coming up? So in the academia, it's a bit different because in the universities, it is believed that, in fact, the crazier you are, the better. It is seen that that is a place that you have all the ideas, you know, and so you're allowed, creativity should reign free. But there's something that we have to understand. Inferences about someone's personality, traits, status can be made from clothing, what you wear. And so if you look at, for instance, dress as a stimuli, how does that, the way you dress make people perceive you? What kind of stimuli does your dressing impact or bring about? For instance, there's been a lot of research, you know, on what the dress does as a non-verbal way of communication. What is the effect of a dress or a piece of clothing on impression formation, social perception? What is the effect of a dress on behavior? Within which context is your dress or clothing, you know, perceived? And researches by several scholars, for instance, Lennon, 1986, and Walkman and Freeman in the 1999, and as well as some other workers from the 2011 Swishmarsky et al. Now, these people have argued that dressing impacts on impression formation. And how is this done? Because by the mere fact that your personality, impressions of personality traits, your culture, your social status, your mood can be inferred from a person's physical appearance. This is what makes clothing an important and influential factor in first impression and initial judgment. A lot of research has also been done in terms of women's provocative dress and negative inferences, and they use the objectification theory. What is this theory? That the objectifying gaze evokes an objectified state of consciousness, which influences self-perception. For instance, if you are in that state of consciousness of being, receiving the objective gaze from either the male, your counterpart, or even other females, whatever the case may be, it has the consequences of the person being objectified engaging in habitual body and appearance monitoring. And some researchers have said that with this kind of thing, it engages a lot of cognitive efforts that could have been otherwise used in task performance. In other words, you're busy trying to monitor your body appearance because you're feeling objectified. And so you pay more attention to, how you are dressed and how it looks more than what the task at hand. Now, in such an environment, women may start perceiving their bodies from a third-person perspective, objects to be looked at and to be evaluated. And so the predominant thing on their mind would be more of how am I seen rather than what am I wearing. Another way you can look at clothing is the effect of clothing on the behavior of the wearer. Like you said, we've just talked about that, your self-objectification itself. It can impact your thoughts about your own self. For instance, it's been found that a study by Raffaella found that employees indicated a link between self-perception and clothing, associating psychological discomfort with wearing inappropriate dress for work, as well as increased social self-confidence with appropriate attire. Now we move forward to what is happening in the universities now. The most important thing for the young female in the academia is striking a balance. You have to show yourself, you have to be yourself, you have to create the impression. What your clothing should showcase what you want, the identity you want to create, and the perception you want others to see. At the same time, you should be able to showcase your personality. Don't forget that this is contextual, because in some of the Western climes now, there's a different perceptions, different acceptance of different kinds of clothing. In the Nigerian system, for instance, the native attire is allowed even from Monday to on Friday, even though Friday is supposed to be the dressing down day. But you can wear your native attire at any point in time. The question is, what is appropriate for the university? If you want to, portray yourself as a professional while still showcasing yourself as a fashionable being, you have to, as well, to fit the occasion, to fit the climb, as well as showcase yourself to be taken seriously. If you wear something in the Nigerian system, for instance, it is frowned upon to wear something that is extremely short. If you are a lecturer or a young scholar and you come to the school dressed in a very short meaning, you are not going to be taken seriously. But at the same time, does it mean that, you have to dress down just because you don't want others to see you in a particular way? That's what I mean by striking a balance. Who are you? What speaks to you? At the same time, use that, be yourself, establish yourself, create your identity. You have a signature fashion or whatever, but do it in such a way that you're still a professional. And so that's just, you know, in the long and short of it, it is, do not dress in a way that you'll be uncomfortable. I've seen young people, young scholars, you know, dressing, and every time they're trying to pull their dress down, you're not comfortable in it. There's another person that can wear something, maybe like that, but she's very comfortable in it, and she's able to focus on what she's doing. What is the Nigerian climb like? You fit that into what you're wearing. I'm not saying be drowsy. There are people, different kinds of fashion sense. Be who you are, but at the same time, draw the line, you know, and then that way you can be respected. And then you can, because it's a very sexist world in the academia, but at the same time, you cannot, because you're a woman, dress down or be drowsy or, you know, allow yourself to be dictated to, you know, by the men, because men wear anything and nobody gives a hoot about it. Women wear this, you know, and then, you know, you're told you have to do this, you have to do that. Strike a balance, be yourself, be comfortable. Most important, be comfortable, and then, you know, stamp your identity. Thank you. Let me stop here. Professor Chiku is telling me round it up. I'm sorry that I took that, you know, historical trajectory. I guess that's what made it
longer. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. We have one more speaker. Dr. Olorentoba Oju.
She's not in.
Yeah, she has been coming. Yeah, I think she unmuted herself now.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, greetings everybody. I'm happy to be here. I want to specially commend the LSE for putting this together, and to thank Professor Gloria Chiku for moderating so well so far. I'm going to, I've prepared a couple of slides that I'll try to run through very quickly. So I'll share my screen with you. And like I said, try to run through as quickly as I can. Just a minute, just to set my screen in such a way that I'll be able to share. Okay, yes. So I'm sorry. I'll start from slide 1 very quickly. I've titled my own intervention, Mentoring Women Professionals in the Academy. I'll start my presentation by way of offering a personal reflection on my own experiences of institutional sexism. I'll also talk about what needs to be done for women to take their rightful place as academic citizens, how to manage the dual responsibilities of caregiving and intellectual life, reflections on the role of cross-institutional solidarities with feminist objectives, and then I'll conclude. So I'll tell just one story, just draw from some of the experiences that I have had at my workplace. Some years ago, at a specially convened meeting between the past Vice Chancellor of my institution and my faculty members, I spoke against the continued suspension of a fellow academic staff by the Vice Chancellor. I argued that the suspension was an infraction and gross violation, gross abuse of the university's regulations. And perhaps to parry what I said or to put me down, the Vice Chancellor responded in what I consider a most scandalous and inappropriate way. He said, Professor Mrs. Lonsoboju has spoken in an emotional way like a woman. And I was so flustered that I was so angry that I practically jumped up. I pointed my finger at him and said, Mr. Vice Chancellor, I take exception to that. And of course, he had to apologize. The dean was there, he did also apologize. And well, that went that way. The same Vice Chancellor would speak Yoruba to me so that he could use the singular pronoun which doesn't carry respect. And I offered to address that. I told him, please, I would prefer to be addressed officially, formally. So I think that's me. I won't want to belabor the points. But the points I'm making from this, some of these instances or stories is that even at the apex of my academic career, I continue to confront deeply ingrained sexism. So it's an issue, it's very much an issue. I've offered this story as a way of looking into the problem of women's professionalism in the academy. And also to ask how women at such moments in professional settings where their engagement is translated as marked in a gendered way. Sometimes, for instance, in cases of workplace harassment, the stakes of this markedness are even deeper. They're much steeper. The story that I've also offers a chance to think about the intersections between the enduring structural constraints on women's professional life and the transformative work women can do in the institutional life of the academy. The post-colonial scholar and cultural theorist, Sarah Ahmed, has put much thought into the institutional life of women. In her works, Living a Feminist Life and Complete, she meditates on the pleasures and discomforts that come with the struggle to undo masculinist hierarchies of power in the academy through feminist work. She writes, and I quote, "Think of this. Those of us who arrived in an academy that was not shaped by or for us think knowledge as well as worlds that otherwise would not be here. Think of this, how we learn about worlds when they do not accommodate us. Think of the kinds of experiences you have when you are not expected to be here. These experiences are a resource to generate knowledge." End of quote. Yeah, Ahmed calls us mourn, and this is very important, especially to our mentee, not to bemoan the frictions that come that feeling out of women experience in a male-dominated institution, or to see how sitting with the discomfort of these frictions can produce transformative possibilities. She reminds these successes we are doing in speaking to professional literacy. We are not simply seeking to make women better professionals, insisting their right to be and showing that such insistence is at the heart of revolutionizing the institution writ large. One of the key challenges that I think women face in their intellectual pursuits is that many women are slowed down by the parallel lives they often lead as primary caregivers of their families and especially their children. For our generation, things were much more intense since traditional was the norm, and many women who pursued careers had to do so in spite of their full-time commitments as mothers and wives. I remember vividly strapping, I'm happy somebody is in the house with a baby. I also remember vividly strapping my youngest daughter to my back, to the office, and even sometimes to the classroom as a young academic. In situations like that, where women's attention is necessarily divided to focus on caregiving, it can prove difficult to still be performing fully at academic responsibilities. And I'm saying that in such moments, it is certainly near impossible to compete as equals with intellectual peers who do not have the same responsibilities. A lot of progress has been made in terms of thinking about men seen as shared responsibility to the credit of feminist labors past, younger generations. Yet there still is a long way to go, and there are new challenges emerging that younger scholars in the House especially must contend with. The major challenge that this generation is facing is that with the thinning of the global job market, the national collapse, the education sector, especially in Nigeria, and the rates of migration that follow from these issues, social life is becoming increasingly atomized for most people. As a consequence, extended networks as a generation will no longer be a resource available to parents this generation. And the co-parenting units will be forced to carry the responsibilities of an entire village. There are different aspects to approaching the challenges of caregiving to the intellectual pursuit of women. First is the individual aspect of things, which requires efforts for female intellectuals to plan much as they can. I think a couple of the speakers have said that already. As much as they can in their careers. Planning means manifold things. First, important to have concrete conversation with co-parents about the best approaches to role distribution that will be fair for everyone's intellectual and emotional well-being. Many means funds or surrendering your this risk partner alone, but as many as are involved in the love relationship. The goal of these conversations, therefore, is to map out an economy of sacrifice stroke surrender, where all parties are participating in care. And I want to say that sometimes we may not realistically be able to stick to a radical 50-50 arrangement. I don't have enough time. I would have shared my personal experience with you, but I can quickly hint at it. In my own home, well, I was brought up to be in the conventional African, Nigerian way. The woman, the girl child is the one who does the cooking and so on and so forth. So I'm used to cooking. But my husband doesn't take it for granted, and I do the cooking almost always. But he doesn't take it for granted that I will cook. And I'm not able to cook. He makes alternative arrangements, even though he really doesn't know how to cook. There are some other things that I'm not able to do that he does. That's an unwritten law, quote and unquote. So it depends on what works with you, but you must talk about it. And you must prepare for it. Otherwise, it's going to jeopardize or impact negatively on your career. So it may be more economically realistic for someone to be fully earning while one partner stays back, but the responsibility should not be automatically hoisted on women. That's the point we are making. And it should be ensured that even when they experience some delays through childbirth, mothers are given the conditions necessary to assist them back on track. These conditions include state-directed social welfare for working parents to assist them with childcare, paternal leave options available to the role of primary caregivers of their children, and involving women in intellectual networks that fit circumstances when they must slow down so that it is not difficult for them to return to the workplace when they are ready. Second, a practical life hack that has worked for me personally is building a routine. Again, I want the mentees to pay attention to this. A routine, tools, manageable goals daily. These routines should also build in time for relaxation and self-care to guard the body and mind against burnout and exhaustion. As Audre Lorde has said, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation and an act of political warfare. On the institute, I hope I still have some 2 minutes, moderator.
You do have, yeah, a few more minutes, although we don't have it. We have only 10 minutes for Q&A, which is not enough.
Okay, so I will just roll. I'm almost done. On the institutional and social aspects of things, we need to begin to undo the dichotomy between intellectual life and care work. Seen in the earlier reference to Ahmed, what is at stake in women's intellectual life is not simply their own growth for its sake, but to take seriously the ways women's presence challenge some of the core assumptions of the institution, some of the legacies of Enlightenment rationality, for instance, where scholars are called to engage as if they were disembodied objective thinkers. What if we welcomed the work of care as an inherent part of the academy? These are things I want us to take away with us today. What if we could learn from motherhood what it means to be caring and ethical teachers to our students? What if, instead of decrying the reduced professional productivity induced by care work, we took it as an opportunity to challenge the exhausting temporalities of professionalism in the academy, the publish or perish drive that sometimes creates unhealthy competition? Let me conclude. I would like to reiterate that professional flourishing of women is a shared institutional responsibility which we must all carry. This responsibility means that we all must dedicate our energies into understanding what the hierarchies of power in our institutions are and how they are gendered. This allows to not simply reduce power to a male-female dichotomy, or to see how the masculine signifying economy of an institution authorizes voices and disavows others. So my appeal to senior female scholars who are at this point entrenched as stakeholders in the institution is that we must be willing to consider the ways our positions of authority have been mediated by the patriarchal order we speak against, and work towards joining the struggle of our younger women, even when these struggles threaten to challenge our own authority. Finally, we must work to understand these struggles within the particularity of our conditions as African women in academia. And as Molara Godipelesli argued, African women must theorize their own feminism. This is in thinking of the practice of women, because any engaged work must speak to its own conditions and values. I want to end here. Maybe question time, we'll be able to talk more. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. If you can end sharing so that we have a wider screen.
Okay, okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay, we have a few more minutes for Q&A. Okay. You can post your questions or raise your hand. I don't know, I'm not in the room. Maybe somebody in the room. I think Dr. Kose, you are in the room, are you?
Only in my heart.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think everybody, I don't know how we can do this, but feel free to, maybe somebody in the room can moderate.
Can I see my junior Dr. Elizabeth Olayiwola there? Can you please take questions for us?
Thank you, ma'am. Please, we have questions in the house. Okay, we have questions. I'll start with.
Yeah, go ahead. We have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Gloria. My question is.
Okay, I'm not Professor Gloria. If you want to address me properly, better.
Professor Gloria Chuku. Good evening,
okay,
madam.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, welcome, man. My question goes to Vicky Brennan, Dr. Vicky Brennan. In her presentation, it was saying that women in positions of authority should empower and uplift women. Now, while people are here arguing that they are being discriminated, don't you see that as a discrimination against the male gender?
Okay, Dr. Brennan.
No, I'm just going to say no. I think that's a terrible premise. Women, I'm not saying that they should ignore men, but I'm saying they should be aware of the power discrimination that has prevented a woman from being invited into spaces of power. So no, I'm not discriminating. I'm not advocating discriminating against men, but I'm saying that women, because we've been through it, should be aware of the challenges faced by other women.
Thank you. More questions. I love the briefness.
Yes, we have another question.
Yes.
There's also a question online. So do you want us to take the one in the physical room?
Well, I think the question online, okay, maybe I read it. I attempted to address that question, unless...
Oh, a panelist.
Okay. There is
a panelist that wants to speak, ma.
Pardon?
A panelist wants to speak, ma.
No. We want to hear from the audience.
Okay, ma.
We want to hear from the audience. There is a question on what can a female junior faculty member do if a female senior faculty member refuses to build a community with her because she's also afraid and isolated. And I responded to that question, you do not give up. Expand your mentorship circle. You can have mentors outside your department and your institution. Your mentors should be both male and female colleagues. They all have unique skills and experiences to help you. We have to move on. Audience, you can ask your question, raise up your hands. I think somebody is helping us direct questions.
Yes, we have another question here, ma.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Chuku. I'm Elizabeth. I'd like to ask, this question is directly to Dr. Brennan, please. In building up each other, a recent issue just occurred to me. I encouraged a fellow female that just came into the system to write a paper. And right now, she's to pay a certain amount for vetting fee. And she just sent a message to me to pay for her, she will pay me later. I'm somehow discouraged. What do you advise? This won't happen. Why I'm here on this very list. I was reminding her on how to pay that very money. And she's asking me to pay, whereas I have my own financial burden to carry. So what do you think I should do about it?
So let me just, I think that it's complicated. I think these things have to be determined contextually. But of course, if you can't afford to pay it because you have your own obligations, then you can't, but you can just be honest and say, I wish I could pay it. Maybe I can find this amount that would help you pay for it, or maybe you can, encourage her to find some other way of funding it. But, it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice all of yourself for others, but to find ways to ethically be with each other. I think some of the comments that Dr. Oloruntola Oju offered at the end of her presentation today were really excellent at thinking about that. This isn't absolute. This also goes to the previous question, right? But these are contextual. So Carly's offering some suggestions too. Thank you for asking me, but I'm unable to do that at this time. All right, I'll stop again there to keep things brief.
Okay, more questions from the audience?
More questions?
Well, we have a minute.
Okay, somebody still has a question. Huh?
Please be brief before they cut us off.
Okay, good evening, and thank you so much for your presentations. Currently, I'm having a challenge where I'm doing my postgraduate studies, right? I tend to volunteer to do certain work for the institute. And in recent times, I've seen that most of the responsibilities that ought to be for the staff of the institute are now being transferred to me. I do not have a problem doing these jobs. However, I have a problem with the perception of the staff of the institute. How do I manage this scenario? How am I able to manage this? I see it as a conflict right now because the staff are not seeing me as someone who is doing their job. They are not okay with what I'm doing, but at the same time, I have to obey the faculty members. So how do I manage this kind of situation? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to dominate the discussion. Can one of us, the panelists, address this question?
Yes, if I may come in, I think there's the way in which many of the things we said already addresses that. And I'll just quickly say that, look, you need to, I think you are taking on too much. You yourself said that. You said you don't mind, but you should mind because it's going to impact on your work. It's going to impact on your productivity and it's going to affect your relationship. It's already affecting your relationship with other people. So learn to say no to some of these things. And then I think you should just speak with a faculty member, a senior faculty member who is like a mentor to you and discuss this issue with the person because that person is likely to know the terrain and be able to assist you better and maybe able to even raise the matter at a higher level where some of these responsibilities will be taken off. That's what I think.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I truly appreciate this panel and I hope the members of the audience got something from the interventions and the discussion. And feel free to reach out to any of us with your questions and concerns, but also note that if we don't reply immediately, it's not as if we're ignoring you. We are all busy people. We will eventually address your questions. I just want you to know that. Once again, thank you for being part of this panel. I wish you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
All the best.
Enjoy your dinner.
I think this ends at 2, which is 7 p.m. Nigerian time.
Exactly. This is the end of the day. Now it's just dinner.
Enjoy your evening in Nigeria.
Thank you. Sorry, I had problems.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.